levels, with many governments now spending more on servicing debt than on healthcare and other essential services. In Nigeria, he says the debt to GDP ratio now stands at roughly 52%, well above the statutory ceiling of 40% set by law. About the presidency, and that's the Ministry of Finance, says it differently. The Finance Minister, Wale Edun, insists that Nigeria's debt levels remain within manageable limits, putting the ratio instead at 38.8%, well below the 60% global benchmark. He argues that recent reforms are boosting revenue, investor confidence is returning, and borrowing is now focused on projects that can deliver direct returns. But Speaker Abbas maintains that urgent reforms are needed. He called for stronger parliamentary oversight, transparent borrowing practices, and a collective result to ensure that every naira borrowed delivers tangible economic and social value. He also announced plans for Nigeria to champion a new West African parliamentary debt oversight framework designed to harmonize debt reporting and strengthen accountability across the region. So all of this raises questions as to if Nigeria's debt really has already breached a statutory limit, if government assurances alone can guarantee fiscal sustainability. Will parliamentary oversight make a real difference? These are some of the things that we'll be exploring on the conversation today. And joining me on the program this afternoon, I have two guests. I have a forensic and finance expert, Professor Godwin Oyedokun. Good evening, Professor Oyedokun. It's great to have you on the program.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Nigerians and Lagosians. I greet every one of us. Thank you for having me today. It promises to be very, very engaging as usual. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also we have the head of research and policy advisory budget, Mr. Vahala Kwaga. Good evening, Mr. Kwaga. It's great to have you on the program.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me begin with Professor Oyedokun. Let me begin with you on this now. Based on this alarm that the Speaker of the House of Reps has raised, right? He said, well, our GDP ratio is now at 52%. It is breaching the legal ceiling. The Minister of Finance is saying 38.8%. Well, I think that's after the rebasing. But, what's your thoughts on this situation? How bad is Nigeria's debt situation really? And let me situate it with Africa because, he also pointed out how, it's not just Nigeria, but looking at Africa, if we're talking about our debts. But according to reports, Nigeria is, if you're talking about our GDP, we're number 4, in African countries. But when we look at the GDP per capita, Nigeria ranks 42nd out of 54 African countries. So I just wanted to put that in context. So how bad really is our debts situation?
Okay, so figure is as good as what makes the figure. And if you go by what Excellency Peter Obi said the other time, and where he warned that once the recently approved loan are factored into figures, the total debt may surpass 200 trillion naira by the end of 2025. You also recall that he equates debt to GDP ratio to over 50%. Which ordinarily signal, I think, the risk despite the GDP. If you also look at the total public debt, which is 149.3 trillion by first quarter, making about 2.8% year-on-year and 3.3% quarterly upswing, you will see that this kind of figure can scare people. Like I used to say everywhere, I'm not a fan of this government, but that notwithstanding, I will not be able to keep quiet or close my eyes when things are going on right or otherwise. I've also learned to a strategic and the militant level to understand that if you really want development, you cannot do but go into debt. My analogy as a teacher would be that I want to go into pure water business or bottled water business, and I have 100,000. The 100,000 naira that I'm having can only do, let's say, 1 pack of bottled water per day. By the time I give it out and I sell it, I will not have any other thing to sell on. I get that money. However, if I go around and I get like 1 million naira debt from people, then I can do about 10 bottled water. Then by the time I will sell 5, I will have produced another 5, and then business will grow. So, like I was taught from so many years ago, around 2005 or thereabouts, by Professor I think Ola Bello and Molabison Obanjo and Professor Tella, that you use credit to build your business. You will see that there may not be any significant thing that is wrong with borrowing, like the analogy is saying. But the only fear we have in Nigeria is that if you want to build a 100 kilometer road, which can cost 10,000 naira in South Africa, the same topology, which can cost 10,000 worth of naira in UK, in other countries. You get to Nigeria, that same 100 kilometer road of the same topology, rocky, swampy, they cost you about 100,000. And you now want to go and borrow 100,000 naira to build a road of 10 kilometers that will have cost ordinarily 10,000 naira. That's where the problem comes from. Then when some people from government will tell you that when they borrow, they will be sure that they are not spending that money on the current expenditure or any other unnecessary cost, but strictly to the infrastructural development, you will say yes, it's okay, but don't forget that the cost already has been factored in with personal pocket money of some people, the economic extortion of some people. And what is the economic extortion that I'm talking about? That's 10% that people will say, if you want me to give you this contract, you must give me 10%. The contractor will have built in all bust up of fraudulent activities and bribery and corruption into the cost of the contract. And you now want to go and borrow that 100% plus the fraudulent activities. That's where the problem comes from, not really in the shenanigans of figures that anybody is getting. See, let me tell you, Nigeria will not develop if we don't go and borrow, because we don't have income that is sufficient for us to develop at a very rapid stage in which we are. If you permit me to go forward,
Okay.
I read about...
Mr. Oyedokun, we have to go to Mr. Kwaga now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll come back to you, because we just really want to know, are we in a good place when we're talking about our debts? Is this something that is sustainable, especially when we're talking about health check financially? So let me take it to Mr. Kwaga now. Mr. Kwaga, your thoughts about what the speaker said. We talked about our debt burden, how it's rising. And at the end of the day, was servicing debts rather than, spending this money on critical infrastructure, essential services. Let me put it that way. We talked about health and other things that can actually impact, Nigerians. So how do you see this? You track government spending and the rest of it. Do you think the government is spending so much on servicing our debts rather than focusing on, other essential sectors that would actually help Nigerians?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And I totally align myself with the concerns shared by the prof. I do not think that there has been responsible management of Nigeria's debts since this administration came on board. For one, administration inherited massive amounts of debt that was brought about by a sheer misunderstanding of the function of the ways and means. So you had the Buhari administration basically quadruple Nigeria's debt. The amounts of money taken in terms of debt by the Buhari administration was in magnitudes larger than the debt collected by Obasanjo. The debt cleared by Obasanjo, collected by Yar'Adua and Jonathan combined. So one would have expected some cautious approach to borrowing. What do we see? The central bank is still regularly issuing treasury bills and government bonds. And yes, you can argue that it serves a dual function. It aims to mop up excess liquidity, but it is also a borrowing instrument, a domestic borrowing instrument. You could also argue that this administration has sort of tamped down its spending as regards, or rather has improved its spending as regards social services. but our education budgets, our health budgets, what is the level of implementation of those budgets? Because you did talk about the quality of public policy and the quality of the implementation of goods and services. So how do you determine a budget that is poorly implemented flowing from monies that are not properly dimensioned? So can an average Nigerian go to the debt management office website or go to the office of the or go to the website of the budget office and clearly understand where money from debt is going to and where money earned through domestic revenue sources is going to? The answer is there is nothing on any of those public websites or even in explanations in the media done by government officials to tell Nigerians this is precisely where the money from debt is going to, and this is what it will be used for. May I remind Nigerians that one of the requirements for external borrowing on the part of the federal government is to provide a cost-benefit analysis. So the federal government, through the Ministry of Budget and Planning, should ensure that there's an explanation given to how this debt relates to national priorities and a cost-benefit analysis that demonstrates the economic and social benefits of the borrowing. This is often not done. So you have a debt that is 400% of our revenue, if we're to compare debt to revenue. That's projected revenue for 2025 is around 37 trillion.
Yeah.
And, total debt external, that's the entire federation now, is around 149 trillion naira. So how is that a sustainable place to be? To be fair, the federal government's debt is around 74 trillion, but that is still, getting to 3 times our revenue. What has been shown in the public space by the handlers of this economy that there is a measured, cautious approach to not only borrowing, but the use of funds. If you recall, not very long ago, the president approached the National Assembly with a revised 2025 to 2026 borrowing plan that looked at the very least, a borrowing program of $21 billion US. And that was approved. So the institution that is meant to serve as a check on the executive, actions, the National Assembly, is consistently just, being a rubber stamp as regards debt management. And might I also point out that it's been investigated by civil society organizations and international donor organizations that there's a lack of quality in terms of oversight by the National Assembly regarding debt management. You have committees on debt in both the House and the Senate, but what are the profiles of the committee chairmen? What is their demonstrated leadership and courage in telling the executive, no, the buck stops here. We must treat this existing debt first, or you must provide a comprehensive repayment plan that does not constrict the fiscal space of the country. This really has not been done. Let me round up by saying even the debt sustainability analyses that were a staple of the Buhari administration, this current administration has not produced one single debt sustainability analysis document. So Nigerians are essentially just relying on what we hear and see in the media. And I think this is a flagrant violation of the principles of transparency and accountability that are enshrined in the Constitution. And it seems like these are just things that the government, looks at by way of just ignoring them.
Okay. Thank you so much. So let me take it back to Professor Oyedoku on this now. What's the real health check, right, for Nigeria's debt? Do we look at debt to GDP, or is it debt servicing to revenue? Because if you look at the US, for instance, yes, they have like their highest GDP. If we look at it, the last I saw is $33 trillion. That was in 2023. But if you also look at their debts, it's about 30 trillion naira. So if you're saying they're owing 30 trillion naira and their revenue is 33 trillion naira, what's left? But again, same thing with China. I think China has a total of 14 trillion. That's if we're talking about debts. This was in 2023. Their GDP in 2025 is about 19.23 trillion. Is this not even far worse than what Nigeria is actually owing? And if we're actually now looking at our GDP, what we currently have based on that rebased GDP is at $243 billion. So how do you know that? Yes. Oh, at the end of the day, you're breaking the ceiling when we're talking about debts limits and the rest of it. I don't know if you get the question.
Yes, I actually got you right, but one of my trouble with the way we get our figures here is the aspect of the fact that this GDP that we are talking about, the way we calculate ours, what goes in, certain parameters in the economy doesn't find their way calculation of it. We have so many assumptions, which other clients that are talking about really are good at. We talk about US, and you can bet it that almost 99 or 95% of their economic figures get to be calculated. In Nigeria, I'm not sure we have it may come from me, but that's not it. Assumption takes about 20-30% of it.
I didn't get that, Professor. What you said? Assumption takes what?
Assumptions to what constitutes GDP may take about 20-25%. Assumption means that if this is this is what we are losing to this, so we sum it up and we make provision for it before we calculate. They may come for me, but that's not a problem. But in the other clients like UK, US, and talk about, they can almost get all these figures. If you walk on the streets of Las Vegas, I've seen that severally. Buy something on the road, you see the seller telling you this is the amount before tax and the amount after tax on the road, but you can't do that in Nigeria. Yes, we are calculating GDP, and we are now saying the tax to GDP is small or debt to GDP is low. So we are putting something on nothing. That said, unless you assume that we are correct with our mistake, okay. So the other institution or other countries that we are looking at, they have better infrastructural development that will not make citizens feel the impact of servicing. So if you look at Nigeria now, I can categorize the other fiscal stress and debt servicing body because a larger portion of our government revenue is being used to service debt. And in recent years, you will also see that Nigeria has spent about 70 to 80% of its revenue on debt service. And that's why you see people saying no. Even despite the fact that I already posited a hypothesis that credit make you grow. If you really channel it very well. And also, the issue of crowding out the Fed means that critical social investment will suffer, worsen because of inequality and poverty that we have. So people don't want to hear that. And by the time politics play, some of our people start going to the street, they will be inciting populace that they are borrowing your money, they are mortgaging your life. They are correct. However, how much do you want me to use to tie my road within my street without borrowing money? Now, notwithstanding, what we should be pressing on is to charge governments with the responsibility of ensuring that the cost of projects they are borrowing for is really the cost. It's just like you go to a mall, they now say they are being paid 25% off. The question is that what was the original amount, or you are just deceiving us? So if you also look at the issue of currency exchange rate pressure, with the nearly half of Nigerian debt being serviced, being external, you will see that the raising obligation definitely expose the country to foreign exchange risk as well. And at the end of the day, it's coming back to us. Yes, we said debt is good, but the fundamental cannot be said to look well because of the fact that depreciation of naira will also make external debt repayment more expensive. All these things must be factored in, not just that we are servicing debt with this or we want this kind of debt in that. I have so many other points. If you permit, maybe when you ask for that question, I'll be able to answer.
Okay. All right. I'll take it back to Mr. Kwaga now. Because, the Minister of Finance, in as much as, the Speaker has said that, well, this is above the threshold that we even set for ourselves, which is 40%. He's saying 52, but the minister is saying, well, it's 38.8%. And most of these borrowings are, tied into projects with clear economic returns. Do you think that really this projects, based on tracking the monies that have gone into the borrowings that have gone into some of these things, that they'll say, okay, road projects, okay, this one is for infrastructure, okay, this one is for electricity. Is it really tied, to with economic returns? If I'll put it that way, is it tied to projects with clear economic returns? And the speaker also mentioned that while we're also borrowing, right, it should support infrastructure, something like health, education, and the rest of it, create jobs, not that it will fuel consumption or corruption. But we also know that some of this money is going to social investment programs, like maybe school feeding programs and the rest of it. So would we say that, this kind of borrowings are not, in the best interest of Nigerians, or really it's not really doing anything, to the benefit of Nigerians? Can we put it that way?
So, I mean, to be very fair, the Speaker of the House recently denied, he ever claimed that Nigeria's debt was unsustainable. Not too long ago, in the media, his media aide came out to say that his statements were taken out of context. So it's very clear that the principal arm of government meant to serve as a check and a balance on the likely abuse of power by any executive is simply failing at that ability. The National Assembly has not demonstrated the ability to put its foot down and play the role meant to be played in democratic societies. To your question on an inability or a justification for debt to be used for critical infrastructure or social protection programs, the jury is out as far as that is concerned, because like I said in my opening statement, there is no explanation, there are no diagrams, there's no information shown to Nigerians and even to civil society precisely where this money goes to. So there should be some form of tracking mechanism that is managed by either the debt management office. So for instance, when it comes to sukuk bonds, when bonds are issued for sukuk issues, and that money comes out, we know that it is used for road infrastructure because it is clearly designated, both the physical roads themselves and even the bonds as they are acquired. So there is a clear way to track the money from bond acquisition to payment, to disbursement. But when this finance comes in, this debt finance comes in, there is no information given by the Ministry of Finance, by the Ministry of Budget and Planning on where this money is going to. So it's just basically blank, or really it's basically like a blank slate for most Nigerians, and we are left guessing, only until we get a soundbite from a government official saying, okay, so-and-so project or so-and-so infrastructure is a project-tied loan. For instance, the Accountant General's office, we were recently told, is revamping its software for processing, reporting, collation of accounting data. And that is a World Bank loan. And I don't think this is anywhere in the budget for us to see. So the problem still goes back to management of budget implementation. And the blame for this falls squarely on the executive and the legislature. The executive needs to provide quarterly budget implementation reports that show specifically what percentage of quarterly disbursed finance is coming from debt and what percentage is coming from our revenues from the previous year. So this will show Nigerians very clearly what debt is taken care of and what regular revenue earned from within and outside sources is going to. The National Assembly should also, in its quarterly review of federal government public policy implementation, should query the federal government in the way it is providing this information and disbursing this money. The recent guidelines issued by the Budget Office of the Federation on the implementation of the 2025 budget have specified a procedure for funding of capital projects. And there's basically like a band. So you have A for critical, nationally sensitive projects, B for projects that are not very critical but still important, and C for projects that can be rolled over or that are not as compelling as A and B. Can we have some form of disclosure on a quarterly basis by the government on how this is being implemented? I'm not sure that the 2025 budget has officially kicked off. I think we're still battling with closing up the 2024 capital projects fiscal year. So it's even unclear how the 2025 budget will be implemented. And remember, we have a deficit of over 17 trillion, just based off of the difference between our budgeted expenditure and our budgeted revenue for 2025. Yeah. So there are a mess of issues that this government is unfortunately not being proactive in providing information. And let me remind listeners that the latest budget implementation report by the federal government is for Q3 2024. So we do not have a full year budget implementation report for 2024. I mean, of course, and we will not have one 2025 and Q2 2025. So we are only relying on statements made by the ministers of finance and budget at events, or by the budget, the DG of the budget office at events. Right. You do not run a democracy like Nigeria's with sound bites.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Kwaga. So I'll take it to Mr. Oyedekun because we need to talk about that. This is the speaker that's also called for parliamentary oversight. And so, you're wondering, you're the same persons that also, approve all of this loans. So why don't you do, some of this, right? But he also mentioned that he clarified those statements and said, he was just saying that borrowing remains responsible and that is tied to productive investment. So, Mr. Professor Oyedekun, how does the government know that, okay, we're not borrowing too much, we're not borrowing at the end of the day where Nigerians will not see the effect? Because the minister is still saying, well, we're within our own threshold of 40% because we have 38.8%. So for them, it seems like we can still borrow. IMF, the World Bank, they're saying theirs is 55%, the threshold. So we're still within that, range. And the speaker also mentioned something about high interest rates. Maybe is this the reason that we're seeing our debts also skyrocket? It said high cost of commercial loans coupled with the burden of repayment in foreign currencies. So it just leaves, Africans, right? The African economy is vulnerable to these market shocks. And we try to, look at the terms and conditions of this, but I can't, talk about everything. But for people like the IMF, they tell you what exactly to do. So there's like a terms and agreement, some of the things that you're supposed to do, for your economy. For the World Bank, there's a grace period of 5 to 10 years before the repayment begins. But there's also, they talk about the very low interest rate. So is this interest rate really low? If it's something like China will say, okay, they are the ones that need to, start the project. So you cannot really employ people in Nigeria, to commence that project because you actually borrowed from them. And so they are doing this. So do you think some of these terms and conditions are the reason that maybe we continue to see African economies not able to adjust to, some of these market shocks? Professor Oyedekun, can you hear me? Prof, are you there?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. The truth of the matter is that there's no debt that doesn't come with no covenant, and it's the covenant that we so see that will determine the viability or profitability of any debt instrument, like my brother in the house also alluded to. The issue is that you need to weigh your options before you go and borrow money from any place. Some organization will borrow where they say before you can touch your spouse, you need to take permission and the likes. And that's why you may be looking at a particular source of finance to be so cheap, but you may not see the covenant in it. And that's why you see the likes of some other countries say the tone down the loan opportunity from other countries. So the people that are charged with the governance of this country honestly, they may not be doing fine in our hometowns, but they are not also idiots. They must have weighed the option of where to get the this from, because at times, like you have even in Nigeria, if you go and borrow from we call it Domule Lantern and the like. These are the general things. So if Nigeria go ahead to go and borrow where we have to motivate our own life, then it will not be okay. So I think we should still give it to the people that are charged with the governance of the country to determine where is the best for us to get this money from. The only thing that our advocacy here can help is, now that people are shouting, you will see that they will be more conscious. And for the speaker and his comment, I give you within the next few days now, you will still respond from federal government. They will respond to him, and I think they are from the same party. They will, if his comment is agitating or is attacking discussion, which is necessary in any democracy of our nature, but I still do not want to think that on the comments should only be on the pages of newspaper. These guys have their numbers and they meet every day. If we go and do that in-house, the have members that are very, very many. They should call themselves together and do the needful. They should not use us to play politics out there. But each time we have such things, it means somebody somewhere may be time to need one attention or the other. That's just my own. They are from the same family. They should just resolve that, and it's good that they are even disagreeing, because at times when they disagree in this kind of nature, it makes us to see what is going on, and it allows us to put our mouth and put pressure on them. It works. It do works. Thank you.
So would you agree with the Minister of Finance that, well, we're still on track, since he said, well, 38.8 is within that threshold?
He's entitled to his opinion, because, like I said, these are gurus, and if somebody wants to do good, bad thing, he has to justify it with level of his own, don't let me say intelligence, what he believes. If the same Minister of Finance happened to be outside his government and he wanted to react, he will also find justification why it's not good. So we just have to permit whatever they are putting to us, because we don't have power other than the power of this mic that we are putting our mouth into.
Okay. Because I think that's the reason for the conversation. Why do we agree with what they say if Nigerians feel like, we cannot see the impact? You're not even being transparent about this. You're the same National Assembly that you're saying, well, the debt is rising, but you're the same people approving the budget and, these loans. They still asked about
that is it.
1.75 from the World Bank.
Okay, for your information, by the time President called all of them and they all meet, to see this approval, and the same speaker will justify why they have approved it. And I know within the time that this statement was pushed out, you will have seen a lot of politicians on that, and then they will settle themselves, and they will just make us to look like spectators that we are, mostly in the scheme of things.
All right. Maybe in 30 seconds, if you make, so I have to go back to Mr. Kwaga. What do you think about, what he said on the establishment of a West African Parliamentary Debt Oversight Framework? He said this will help harmonize debt reporting across the countries, create regional standards for transparency, empower the parliaments with timely data for effective scrutiny. They also talked about how maybe major borrowing proposals should be subject to public hearing so that citizens also have the oversight functions. They know that, this is what the money is also going into. Prof.
Please, can you repeat that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I said the speaker is asking that there's the establishment of a West African Parliamentary Debt Oversight Framework, right, that will help harmonize debt reporting across the countries. This is in Africa. Create regional standards for transparency, empower their parliaments with timely data for effective scrutiny of borrowing practices, ways to stop, all of this unnecessary debts and borrowings. So what's your thoughts about what he said?
So how does that include the power of sovereignty of each of the states? This same ECOWAS or AU that could not agree on single currency now wants to help us with debt recovery. Or somebody somewhere is trying to look for another opportunity to engage some people to have another set of jobs that is spending our money on. If the Constitution of Nigeria places responsibility of National Assembly to have top two oversight function on federal executive and the like, and they now want to look for other committee from outside the country to help them. I think we are not serious the way we're living about things in Nigeria. What is this supposed to mean? I'm not sure that we are serious at all. If you have power to accept or reject, you cannot do it. You don't want to go and borrow matches from outside to come and fight your cause in your house. How? You don't understand what is going on. You have the power to say no to your people. You have weapons. You have everything. I'm so sorry. I'm not seeing anything that is so much about.
Okay. All right. Let me take it to Mr. Kwaga. So he was citing available data, right? And he said for Africa, 2022, it's 1.8 trillion US dollars. That's Africa's debt profile. And they said external borrowing is expected to surpass 1 trillion US dollars maybe by 2025. And, you also mentioned other debt to GDP ratio in other countries. Talked about Sudan, 344%, Angola. And so they talked about how, again, you need to focus more on other essential services. And, he talked about the establishment of this West African Parliamentary Debt Oversight Framework. How useful do you think this will be, in ensuring accountability?
I think it should be an exercise in futility, because the federal government of Nigeria, and this is an indictment on most of the administrations from 1999, has the penchant to disobey its own laws, not to talk of resolutions, whether binding or non-binding, by the Committee of Nations. So I do not think it would be impactful in any way. We have a government that tends to regularly exercise impunity than the rule of law. So at best, it would be simply a forum for politicians to gather and high-five each other. What we want to see is a clear demonstration of decisive leadership by the National Assembly in the country. And Nigerians cannot be told that they would be called for public hearings, because what is the use of feedback from citizens during public hearings that have been held? We are privy to budget defense sessions where citizens are kept out. We are aware of oversight hearings where the media is kept out. So what example are we looking at really that can show that the National Assembly is interested in getting the views of Nigerians? I think the only shining light so far is the recent public hearings by the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives. And, Honorable Bamidele Salam is perhaps the first of, any chairman of that committee to summon agencies, to give accounts. Apart from him, he is the exception that proves the rule. So, I mean, it's just a jamboree. It would be a jamboree, if you ask me to be very candid, if, this request or this proposal by the Speaker of the House is taken seriously in any way. I mean, the National Assembly, I was watching, an interview on one of the major news broadcasting corporations, and, the spokesman was giving the House a 90 over 100. Does that look like a parliament that is willing to be critiqued, that is willing to be honest, that is willing to have integrity in the way it handles public goods and resources? The answer is clearly no. So I do not think that they should waste anybody's time by even asking the question. It's almost somewhat frustrating that politicians sort of behave like they are ignorant of the realities on ground and the realities that stare them in the face every time they drive from their homes, to their offices.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Viola Kwaga, Head of Research and Policy Advisory Budget. We do appreciate your time on the program this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Professor Godwin Oyedekun, forensic and finance expert. We appreciate your expertise on this matter. We hope that, the National Assembly also looks into all of this situation, what people have also said, and they perform their oversight functions, really better than what we see now. I mean, I was trying to check, okay, where are these projects the borrowings, but you're not really able to track, like, Mr. Kwaga, really said. We just hear of these borrowings, but how far have they gone? So I think more needs to be done. So thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
your
much
contributions. All right. And that's it on the big story this evening. We'll take some messages. You can join me on the round table.
Since 1894, we've witnessed the evolution of a nation and proudly partner with its people on their path to prosperity. From the ink-stained ledgers to fast transactions, First Bank has consistently adapted, embracing innovation and making giant strides across the globe. It's not just about banking, it's about enabling your success, generation after generation. Our legacy define the past, shape the present, and will still be fostering financial security and stability for future generations. We're helping to create a future where the possibilities and where the world looks up to Africa. Let's awaken the giant in you. You first. First Bank.
Grand Bell International na the shipping solution company where they target to meet your need. After their incorporation for New York in 2002, Grand Bell don grow so tey dem don open office and small companies for Nigeria and other parts of Africa, Houston, Texas for USA and Europe. Dem dey handle shipment worldwide. Dem go sama you orishirishi shipping services for plenty items wey include air freight, ocean freight, 20 or 40-foot containers, trucking, warehousing, customs clearing, express services, consolidation and imports, plus including pickups and delivery to your domot. Dem full ground for Lagos for number 21 Toyin Street, Ikeja, and you fit call them on 080-3513-7916. You even fit email them for info2@grandbellinternational.com and them tanda for Instagram at grandbellinternational inc at grandbell. Your satisfaction, they important to us.
We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Good evening and welcome to the roundtable here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. I'm Zainab Balogun Olu. So today on the roundtable, we'll be taking a look at, the JAMB panel. This is a special committee on examination infractions, and they presented their reports to JAMB on the examination malpractice, technology-driven malpractice that is undermining Nigeria's admission process. So the person in charge of that committee, Mr. James Ekpele, or let's begin with the report, right? The professor of JAMB, Ishako Loyede, said that the chairman of the committee, James Ekpele, they uncovered 4,251 cases of finger blending. This is what they called it. So this is fingerprint manipulation. Right, 192 instances of AI assisted impersonation in just one UTME cycle. Now, 1,878 false declarations of albinism were also recorded, with photos manipulated to impersonate other candidates. These are some of the reports, right, from this committee based on examination malpractice. So 1,878 false disability claims. They claim that they were disabled, but they were not. Forged credentials, multiple national identification numbers, if you are talking about their registrations. And they also talked about collusion between candidates and examination syndicates. Now, I don't know if I said this stands out, but from that report, it says that 80% of parents, right, are behind parents are behind 80% of infractions, rather than not 80% of parents. So parents are behind 80% of these infractions, saying that, they are trying to give a mark to their children that they did not, actually get. So what's your thoughts on this? Because we're not just talking about JAMB. If you take it back to primary school level, secondary school level, where sometimes you think that parents are trying to tell the teachers what to do. Or how come you say my child did not pass? Why would they not pass? and maybe they are now forced. But what's your thoughts? Is it just the parents? Is it the parents are because they said, 80% of these infractions? They also talk about the CBT centers also colluding, right? They talked about, forced disability and the rest of it. What's your thoughts on this report and the fact that they're saying parents have caused, 80% of these infractions? Should we blame parents, for this examination malpractice that we see? And I mean, you can take it down to the primary and secondary school level before we get to this, because it will not just start one day. So 0913-5000-953. You can send a WhatsApp message to 009-682-2595. Hello, good evening.
Hello, Jonah.
Mr. Paul.
Yeah.
All right. It's great to have you. Go ahead.
They are talking about parents and so on, and this is what they have discovered. Are they trying to exonerate themselves? You heard what happened. Where they committed suicide, and this is not my result. When they released that result, Minister of Education and some people, they didn't around with this. Shedding crocodiles here, and so on. What happened? They say glitch, this and that. In that report now, where did they blame themselves? Are they passing all the onus and responsibility of the inadequacies to the parents? I don't get it. So, this is a country, I said it, is yet already supposed to be sacked. You cannot claim that you satisfy the result. You told us that this is the result. This number of students that failed, this is the result. At the end of the night, you said there's glitch. Today, never explained. I say sending all the results to INPDA, as some of my friends suggested.
All right.
And I'm asking you, what brought has he explained? Because this everything happened, the ministry or anything that the responsibility exonerate themselves from all the blame. In that report, where did they blame themselves?
All right, Mr. Paul, I think we've gotten.
That's what we should ask.
I think we've gotten. I mean, that's a good question to ask, right? But so let's look at these cases of 4,251 cases of fingerprint manipulation. Who should be blamed for that? I mean, 192 instances of AI-assisted impersonation. So if you look at this, you also look at JAMB themselves. What tools do they have, to actually, cross-check some of these issues? So if you're saying AI manipulated impersonation, right? So do they have these AI-powered tools as well to also be able to cross-check? To see that, okay, this is actually an impersonation. And when you're talking about fingerprint manipulation, do they also have those tools that you will know that, okay, this is not your fingerprint? So I think this is where it also falls to JAM as well. But the committee said this was independent. So it wasn't really JAM that came up with this report saying the examination malpractice. It was the special committee on examination infractions, that presented the report to JAM, right? Talking about this malpractice and what led, or the levels as to the malpractice. And they said that parents cause 80% of these infractions. This according to them. But they also talked about 4,251 cases of fingerprint manipulation, 192 instances of AI-assisted impersonation. So I think these are things, to actually look out for. 1,878 false disability claims. So did they also check all of this, right? So those things are also, JAM also needs to answer, some of those things and also work on some of those things. 0913-5000-953. You can send a WhatsApp message to 009-682-2595. Your thoughts on this report, right? And why I'm emphasizing the parents is because they said they caused 80% of these infractions. it's not like they didn't talk about faith-based organizations. In fact, they said that, faith-based organizations also are part of, examination malpractice, right? They also talked about the CBT centers colluding with some of these students is also one of the things that, they saw as well. But 80% of these infractions caused by parents saying that they're trying to, get a mark or assign their children a mark that they did not actually get. So your thoughts on that situation? Do you think parents are also to blame when it comes to issues like this? When we talk about primary school, or your child did not pass, and then you get to the child brings their results home, and you go back to the school to complain, how come my child did not pass? Do you blame the school for that? If they now decide, okay, let's promote this child, should the school have stood their ground that yes, they actually failed? Or when we talk about when it comes to examinations, right, where your parents decide to register you in a special center just for you to pass your examinations and the rest of it. So are the parents really to blame for some of these issues that we are seeing in the education sector, especially when we're talking about examinations and the results? Or do you think that it's not just the parents, everybody? I mean, your thoughts on this situation. Hello, good evening. Good evening, welcome to the round table. Can you hear me? All right, do try to call back 0913 5000 953. You can send a WhatsApp message to 0809 682 2595. And so I would say what exactly he said. He said that it was independent, JAM did not interfere. It was JAM, they inaugurated this committee and mandated it to investigate the surge in examination infractions. They didn't want to do it themselves. They wanted, an external assessment and also assess JAM systems and propose reforms. And part of the reforms proposed by, this committee. Okay, let's take this call. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Are you there? Okay. All right. Do try to call back. So the panel talked about, this is Mr. James Ekpele who headed this panel, and they lamented the malpractice has become highly organized, technology-driven, and dangerously normalized. Now, they called on JAM to adopt a multi-pronged response that includes deploying AI-powered biometric and anomaly tools. Okay, we'll take this call. Hello, good evening. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, maybe from your side. Hello?
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
All right, okay. Go ahead. James Obuna,
okay.
right?
Yeah, James Obuna. Okay, so for me, I don't know, but I think I would blame parents. Because I won't want to blame children. I want to blame children and have parents, because the truth is, if you check most of these centers, there's hardly any center that you see that's not into miracle, what they call miracle center or super center. And that is common exactly in WAEC. In WAEC, I don't know about NECO, but in WAEC, it's very, very, very common.
Okay.
Yeah, you see somebody who didn't write exam in his own school, maybe attending the government school, tries to change to go and write exam in a private school. The money you're going to pay is going to be very high, and they will have included all the money for the sorting and the result of but sometimes when you go there, you will know it's an exam. You will think it's a classroom because they're writing it to them on the board and them on the so most parents know that this is what they want. They not students want to write their exam to write exam, and the child will pay. So they have to pay that money so that they can write that exam once and come out. So
okay. So do we really blame the parents? Okay, fine. The parents decided, oh, let me put this person in a special center. Well, is it not because already we have these special centers? I mean, if you go and you're telling them you want to pay, and this center calls the police that, this parent is trying to engage their child in examination malpractice, wouldn't we see this stop, right?
Okay. Yeah, the idea is that if there's nobody to patronize them, those centers are not. But because people are patronizing them, that's their story. And like I said, when you are paying, They won't tell you that they won't tell you that you pay separately for results. They have factored everything together inside the total amount you pay. So, and parents, they know this, and the schools, they know this. In fact, the reason why they will not cooperate is that the more they are having more states who are coming up good results, the more it's an advert for them, because people will be referring their strength to them, because no child comes out there and fails themselves. So that's why they will not. So the system is, I don't know if they can totally remove that. I doubt.
All right. Thank you so much. Right. Who do we blame for examination malpractice, really? The report says parents, tutorial centers, schools, and even some CBT operators are complicit in the fraud. Where it said that, 80% of these infractions are from the parents. I remember Mr. Paul was saying, okay, Jam, what about them? What about, the glitch? Really, we're not really talking about the glitch, right? We're not really talking about the glitch. They have their issues to also settle. They also need to work on that, right? But this is examination malpractice. Jam they're not